Welcome to the Construction Show. I'm your host, Jared Downey. Today on the show, we have Adam Livesay. He is the founder of Elevate. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You drove in today. Where'd you come from?
South of the border, about an hour in a town called Marysville, Washington.
Nice. How big of a town?
20, 30,000 people.
Okay.
Yeah.
So kind of that nice size.
Yeah. I grew up there, left for about a decade and moved back about a decade ago.
Where did you leave to, if you don't mind me asking?
Seattle, then over to Spokane, down to Portland, back up to Seattle, and then back home.
So now that you've got both, do you prefer the 2-3 million plus or the 20,000?
Yeah, right. I like being out. I like being out where I live, kind of in the suburbs country, but I do like my weekend stays in the city.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
Yeah. I'm still in the city stage, but now little family and that. So it's like,
yep.
I definitely, when we go out, I don't know if you know the area, but Langley, just outside of Vancouver.
Yep.
I drive by those plots of land. I'm like, oh, that would be nice. Now.
Yeah.
It's weird how you don't think it's going to happen. And then as it's like every year, you want to go back a little bit more. What was the origin of the company? How did you get started?
Yeah. So I started my career inside industrial distribution, system integration for off-highway OEMs. I started in engineering, and then I got into business development, led a electronic controls business unit. During that time, we had these OEMs that were smaller OEMs, built a couple hundred machines a year, asking us if they could get data from their machines back to their computers. So we started to build some prototype systems in 2014, 2015. And then we had a really large multinational company come to us and ask us if we would co-develop something with them. At that point, my partner who owned the industrial distribution company and myself spun it out, and we started Elevate.
Oh, I see. So it was an extension of the company that was not an extension, but it was still attached personnel wise, but
then we spun it out. I left the company, started to build, Elevate, and completely separated for a number of reasons.
Right. Okay. So now it's completely separate. Yeah.
Yeah. Since 2017.
So but you basically had clientele right off the bat.
Yeah.
That's a different setup than a lot of people have.
For sure. Right. So, we had use cases, we had some validation, we had stuff that's happened on the West Coast, and we had peers of ours in the same type of industry around the United States. And so we met with them and said, hey, is this a need over in, Ohio, in Iowa, in Texas, in Ontario, as it is in Portland and Seattle? And the consensus was, yeah, it's a need. Customers need this technology. It's not readily available. And that was our big, shove to go outside of our previous company.
So then when you went basically spun out the company, now that development, were you able to keep clients? Did you have clients throughout the development, or was there a period where you had to go pure development basically?
Yeah. We had a period of pure development, for sure. And then we also had a really large, one of the component suppliers, a company called Parker Hannifin, who was our first customer. And so we had a 3-year engagement with Parker to help with the co-development and co-build of it. So they have an internal Parker solution that our engineering team was really key on with them. And then 2020, now we spun out of that path, I would say, and redirect ourselves to small, medium size, and then enterprise type OEMs.
Right. What was the biggest challenge in development? Well, let's just do a little bit of a zoom out of what. I also want to get into some of the partners. I mean, just to quickly rattle them off. Like you're working with Cummins. You've mentioned a couple other big ones you're currently working with. Like huge success.
Absolutely. So Cummins is a key partner of ours. We've been working with them for almost 3 years now on the product side and the commercial go-to-market side. We work with a company called Hydroforce, part of the Bosch Rexroth family. We work with them on a lot of technology partnerships and commercial partnerships out there, and several others.
Like when did these large organizations come on board with you? Because there's a big gap from obviously 17 to 2024.
For sure.
Yeah. When did you start having that success with these large organizations?
Yeah. So, we saw this shift early on, which was to do, an IoT solution, right? To deliver an advanced telematics solution for an OEM, there were a lot of puzzle pieces in the larger puzzle, meaning you had to have a lot of technology partners kind of work together.
Right.
When we spun out, we worked with a lot of small OEMs, call it 500 machines and less a year. Those 500 machines less a year might build a piece of mining equipment or construction equipment, agriculture equipment, and they're competing with the really big companies, right? Those really big companies have really advanced technology, and the smaller companies need to be able to deploy something to be competitive out there, but they don't have the internal resources to do so. So they start partnering with companies like Elevate.
Right.
Part of that partnership, though, is being able to tie into key technical aspects of their component suppliers.
Right.
So for us, what we ended up doing was we worked with dozens, almost 100 plus of these OEMs around North America. And these OEMs work with all of these, now partners of ours, right? So they might be a Cummins engine OEM, right? They might be a Hydroforce cartridge valve OEM and so forth. So just inevitably by working together on this next generation of their machine, we start technically working with these suppliers.
Right.
Then the business and product side from the suppliers kind of reach out to us and say, hey, you guys have an interesting niche here. You guys are going after the market in a way that we haven't seen before. We'd like to figure out how to collaborate and, 1 + 1 = 3 type scenario.
Wow.
Yeah.
So just to zoom out a little bit for people that don't understand the what you're actually offering, can you just give it, that person that's never heard of what you're doing?
For sure.
Can you just give us sort of a rundown?
Yeah. So we're a Fitbit for heavy machinery, right? Is the best way to put it. So we work with the manufacturer of the machines, the OEMs that build off-highway machinery. Off-highway for us means anything outside a factory wall. So bulldozers, mining equipment, agriculture, cranes, fire trucks, utility vehicles, and then wakeboard boats, right? So the people that build those equipment. We develop technology.
I didn't expect wakeboard boats.
Yeah, for sure. So it's tangential to what we do, but a lot of our partners sell into the wakeboard boat community.
Oh, okay.
And the wakeboard boat manufacturers have the same challenges that our off-highway folks do, right? The machines are becoming more complex. There's more technology being deployed in the machines. They need to have better service tools. They need to be able to update software over the air, know how the machines are being ran, what's the warranty, contracts on them and so forth. So that's what we do. We provide technology that connects those machines to the cloud. We connect the machines, we connect the businesses, and we connect the ecosystems together. So sharing data between the machine in the field back with the headquarters of the manufacturing facility, and then taking that data and sharing it with your service departments, your dealers, your key suppliers to ensure a better experience ultimately for the operator of that machine.
Okay, this is what I want to do the contrast of what you're doing then, because what before an Elevate is in there, what is then happening? Because there's a lot of this technology that's being pumped into these machines has been around now for a while, but it hasn't essentially been connected. So what was happening before? Yeah. Like, was it just you did basically have to have someone go out there and run a diagnostics? Is that
for sure?
Yeah, that was the system.
So there was telematics in the industry always for the last 20 plus years, but it was from the perspective of the fleet operator. So if you're a fleet operator, there's a really valuable use cases for telematics around route tracking, utilization, some safety records, really given towards the operator and the fleet level. For the OEM themselves, though, you need a lot more of that information for your machine, because now you want to look at hydraulic systems, pumps, motors, valves, engines, transmissions, you name it, right? And so before Elevate, you would have to take a service tech, go out to the machine, take a programming cable, plug it into your controller, be able to see the diagnostic messages coming out, see what the issue is, go back to your service center, get the right parts. I mean, this is a massive problem that hits the entire industry.
Well, I bring it up because I had people in private, they would complain about some of the major OEMs. They would say like this new tech is like it was bogging down their operations.
Yeah, and a perfect storm's brewing too, where these machines are becoming more complex. you have a ton of people that are retiring out of the workforce
Mhm.
that have a tremendous amount of knowledge about these machines, and we don't have enough young people coming in.
Yeah.
So you have this whole storm brewing, and these OEMs that we're working on, they're saying, how do we get ahead of this, right? How do we take data and information that's off of those machines, get it back to our headquarters, and be able to make recommendations on the service of those machines? Can we push a software update? How critical is that issue out there before it gets serviced and so forth?
Wow. So yeah, because now I mean, it's similar to like a Tesla getting a software update.
For sure. And it makes it even a little bit more complex in the fact that the major component suppliers of machine, so like the Parker Hannifins, the Bosch Rexroths, the Danfosses, the Edens, they all have controller technology that has the same protocol in the machine to talk with each other, but not the same protocol to update their controllers over the air. So if I'm an OEM with 4 different suppliers on, which is very typical, I have to have 4 different service tools if I'm going to go out there and service the machine. With Elevate,
Right.
we are one layer that can update all of those major controller brands.
Well, you're saying 4. It seems like it could be more.
Way more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be way more.
Yeah. So and I've had these discussions on the show as well, and especially on the mining side, is that you've got, well, I'll jump over to the mining. In a mining operation, you've got the equipment, then you've got the milling equipment,
sure.
then you've got the water processing.
Yeah.
It's just insane.
Yeah,
And everybody's got their own sensor for their own thing.
for
It's
sure.
I'm listening to these conversations sometimes. I'm going, okay, I'm glad there's smarter people than me because I'm not keeping
Yep.
up anymore. But you're in a machine. If you're looking at a big dozer nowadays, the components and the sensors and all that stuff
Yep.
that's operating in that, I don't even know. I mean, maybe you know. I don't know how many components are in that from different suppliers.
Yeah, dozens, right? And the major ones with ECUs and controllers on it that can be remotely serviced and push software updates or run service tools, you're probably talking a half a dozen, right? 5 to 10 different
On
major
one
brands
machine.
on one machine.
That is crazy.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
And they all have different service tools. They all have different software programming updates. And so with what we've done with Elevate is we've created like an extraction layer that allows us to update that software, allows our partners, like the OEM, to be at headquarters, use their service tool from Parker or their service tool from Danfoss or whatever it is, remotely connect into the machine and be able to run all that remotely without having to use 4 different service tools on the machine.
Okay, so this is I like to speak for the audience who doesn't understand, and half the time it's more for myself as well. Are you physically then do you have something that is plugged into the machine itself?
Yep.
Okay, so
Yep.
there is a physical
Yeah,
component to this.
there's a telematics gateway box that plugs into the machinery, sits on the CAN bus or the mod bus, whatever that machine's running, and it's reading data out, and then it allows for a gateway to flash software over the air.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's a lot of intelligence that happens on that box. But if you think about an OEM, previous to Elevate, they were vendor locked into one supplier. So, if you had to run in someone's service tool, if one of those major suppliers were going to put their box on there, it was only going to work with that major supplier's service
Right.
tool to flash it. Now the OEM has complete flexibility to say, hey, I can run all my service tools with all my major suppliers, and
Damn.
now my data is going on a third-party industry cloud rather than one of my suppliers' clouds. And
Right.
that's a big game changer for OEMs because it gives them a ton of flexibility and not being locked into the major suppliers.
Well, yeah, well, especially in these supply chains and
Yep. Relationships, right?
relationships,
You have
all that.
very strong relationships with all of them, and they're all peers.
Yeah.
And you don't want your data necessarily on one of your suppliers and not your others. So
Right.
that's where we fit, right? We fit in that aspect.
It was the physical. When I was going through it, I missed the physical component. I didn't realize you were actually putting a physical, basically an attachment on the machine software or
Yep.
on the. Sorry, what is it again?
on the machine. So it's a gateway. It's an industrial gateway. It's a cellular, Wi-Fi, or satellite gateway that sits on the machine.
Wow.
And we don't build that. We actually partner with folks that do build that.
Oh, I see.
And most of those suppliers have a version that I mentioned that have Elevate's part number on there.
Right.
So if you really like supplier A for whatever reason, you can buy that gateway with the Elevate software on it, and then you can put it on the machine.
So is each machine then, when you're going to put it on, let's say a dozer or an excavator, do you configure then that to that specific to that machine?
Our OEMs do, yeah. So we're in the design cycle with them on new machine builds.
Okay.
So they can go in there and they can configure what data points that they want to, because a lot of them have majority of those sensors already on the machine.
Right.
They're using it for control feedback. They're using it for sensors, a lot of different reasons on the machine already. Now they're collecting that and they're transmitting it up into Elevate. It's providing them different pieces of information. So like, for example, on a street sweeping application, they have sensors on there that are controlling the force of the brush, right? To do the work. That force of the brush can also tell them on when work's being done and when that brush is starting to, when the force of the brush is increasing over time, which tells us the quality of the brush is decreasing. So that OEM can take that sensor on the machine, connect it into Elevate, and tell them a tremendous amount of information about the operation and the health of that machine.
Okay, so this is another gap. So the OEM has that information. What are they doing with that? They're updating, saying, "Hey, your machine's ready for service," kind of like the thing I get on my car.
Yeah, so now they've connected their machine, right? So they have a connected machine now. It's telling them information. They'll take that data and they might take it into their internal service department. So their internal service department is getting information and notifications ahead of time. They might share that with their dealer network and their service teams. They might share that with their engineering department. Hey, this is what we're seeing out there in the field for engineering. It really depends on what that ecosystem is of the OEM. Some OEMs have very strong dealer networks. They have very strong service networks and want to share that information.
Yeah.
Other OEMs own all of that. We have an OEM that has, 85 service techs all around North America, and they own the entire service department. So they're keeping that stuff internally.
Right. Now, what about though? How does that land for the operator, like the actual fleet management? If I've got 20, 30 street sweepers.
For sure. So those folks typically have fleet management software. So in our platform, we have APIs. And so if they want to take all the data off of the AMP, API, they can take that data and they can share it with their fleet software, and they can still run the same business tool that they're using to do fleet management coming through our data set rather than another data set out there.
Sorry, explain that again. So
if I have my gateway on there right now and the gateway's collecting data, my fleet management company is probably using some type of fleet management software already to manage their fleet. That data that's coming up to my cloud has an API that will tell me engine hours, GPS location, tracking, whatever it is. That fleet management software can pull our API data and plug it into their API.
Pretty much
anyone. Yeah, we use industry standard RESTful APIs. We use the AMP API protocol. So we want it to be extended because our OEMs, they don't want to keep the data internally, right?
Right. Yeah.
They want to keep it for their use cases, but for their end customer, they want to be able to share that data.
Right.
And they want to make that very easy to be shared with, because if you're a municipality or you're a construction company or you're a fire station, they could all have different types of fleet management systems, and they're all familiar with, oh, here's the API. This is how I get the data off of my OEM's cloud and put it into my fleet management system.
This must have huge potential for, well, you already alluded to it with like an aging workforce, but this must have huge potential if I'm operating, let's say I'm here in Vancouver, but I've got operations around North America.
Yeah.
That now I don't need this. If I have 3 really good techs that I have here.
Yeah. We work with the rail service company out of Canada, and they're in all of the big rail, operators out there. And that's what they do. They're looking for indicators of mains problems in the rail machines. They're looking for issues. They want to be able to plug in remotely. They want to see what the fix is. Is it
from their office?
From their office, right? Man. And then if it's mission critical, then they can put someone in an airplane.
Right.
If it's not mission critical, and they can push the software up there and go, oh, it's just a burned out coil. Let's get a coil out there. Let's change that coil. They can see a lot of that information all over North America.
And again, to contrast that, because sometimes what happens with technology is that it's such a fix, you almost forget how it used to be done so quickly.
For sure.
So the way that would have been done, well, I'll give an example. Overland conveyors. There's actually actual regulations that you have to drive along. You have to walk the length of the conveyor.
Yeah.
So people drive along them, and they don't need to do it.
Yeah.
There's sensors, there's all kinds of data
Yep.
now that you do not need to do that. You're not they listen. There's actually a term they use for it, and they listen to hear if there's a sound that's off.
Oh, interesting.
You know,
Yeah.
this is a regulation. You can't
Yeah.
have the conveyor without the
Yeah.
person driving. This is so crazy.
Yeah.
But in this case, I mean, what would have that scenario you just brought up with the rail?
Yeah.
What would have that looked like 20 years ago, let's say?
Yeah. This company, what they used to do was they would see an issue, they would put someone on an airplane.
How would they see the issue though?
They would go out there, there'd be an issue, the machine wouldn't be working, it'd be firing up indicators inside the HMI.
Something's already gone wrong.
Something's gone wrong, right?
Okay.
They go out there, they look at the control panel, the HMI screen, or just lights that are lit up. There's an issue on this machine. We have to get a service tech out. That service tech's either going to get an airplane or drive out, and they're spread out around the country.
Yeah.
So it might be an 8-hour drive, might be a 12-hour drive, it might be an airplane. They'll get out there, they'll plug their laptop into it. They'll look at the service. If the service tech can't figure it out, then they're on the phone with the engineer back at the OEM.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to relay messages back and forth, and they're trying to troubleshoot it that way, right? Rather than the OEM just being able to pull up their dashboard, go right on that machine and look at all the information within minutes, rather than that whole scenario we just played out.
Right.
Well, what's kind of crazy too is we have an OEM right now on their next generation machine. They have these very complex construction pieces of equipment. They have the display screens in there. And what they're doing with Elevate is we're actually allowing them to mirror their display screens remotely. So you can see exactly what's on the display in the cab for a service job. But then they can actually take over the display screen with their mouse remotely and go through all the screen menus. Because if you think about it, you have an operator in there and you have someone on the service machine, even though they're mirroring it, they're going, okay, now go to page 3. All right, scroll down for me. All right, go into the full.
Oh, I literally have a picture in my head of some of the people I know that do operate these machines.
Yeah.
I've come from the country that tons of people and I can just picture them right now on their phone. And your hands are dirty. You just had to get out. So it's you're trying to work. And there's dust flying everywhere and this whole thing. And you're sitting there going, I know I don't see it. I don't see 100%. That button. Yeah.
And so now they have this whole safety
out even having the conversation.
They put the machine in a certain mode, and it's in this whole safety lockdown mode. And then the OEM can go in there, see what's on the screen remotely, and then take the mouse and go in there and be able to remotely hit all of the different pages to get in there. That's the next generation of machines coming out.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So, but that is also coming from what
it's coming from what we do.
Wow.
Yeah. So we connect the machine, then we connect the business, then we connect the ecosystem. So you're getting this machine's connectivity and being able to get data up there. Now the OEM themselves, their business, can remotely get in there. They can troubleshoot. They can go through the display screens, and now they can start to share that information with the local service tech. They can share it with their local dealer. They can share it with their customer or their fleet operations on what needs to be done.
You really are the gap between the operator being able, like the person actually running these machines, to be able to take advantage of all the technology without all the headache, and the OEMs and the operators and the owners of these assets being able to be proactive rather than something goes wrong.
100%.
And now there's an issue. Now you've got a guy you're paying for the guy sitting on the machine.
Yeah.
You're paying for the tech to come out there. The OEM is now suffering a brand hit because maybe their tech people are on the other side of the country right now. You're trying to configure all that, like all these issues that are just standard right now.
So if we can just help reduce that downtime, reduce that frustration. We're one of our major suppliers that sells into OEMs. When their component goes down, it's down for 8 days on average in North America. So if we can just cut that in half, right, the amount of time and dollars that saves for the operation, as well as customer frustration, supply chain efficiency, you name it, is massive. So we're not even saying going to zero downtime,
right,
or just in time. We're just saying, how can we cut it in half?
But I imagine you're avoiding a lot of downtime with just getting ahead of the communication.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
What's been the biggest challenge? This we've talked about all the great things in the development. This has been, what is it? 7 years now?
Coming up 8 years. Yeah.
I'm sure you've had some challenges along the way. What are a couple of the big ones? Just in the business development, the tech development.
For sure. So on the tech development, we can start there. Most of our industry just a few years ago went to 4G, you know, cell phones. So 3G was a lot lower bandwidth, right? A lot higher latency, I would say, right? So it made a lot of these remote service capabilities more challenging.
Right.
So that's a big issue. Number two, you know, a lot of OEMs weren't really familiar with APIs, and they weren't comfortable with data sitting on third party cloud infrastructure.
Right.
COVID eliminated that because a lot of companies had to start using cloud software tools remotely, like Zoom and Teams and Slack and everything. So these corporations really kind of swallowed the frog and said, hey, we're going to become a company that works with third-party cloud providers. So now, before we'd have to go out there and convince everybody that we're doing the best standard security practices and data governance practices and GDPR practices, and they weren't familiar with it now. Now our OEMs, they have their security guidelines, right? They have their GDPR guidelines. They have all this set up so they can audit you rather than us telling them how to audit us, right? So those were big challenges at the beginning. I would say in the last few years, the challenges that we're seeing were the human resource challenges, organizations not really being set up to have an IoT or telematics manager in-house, right? It's going to help them roll this out. How are you going to roll it out to your dealers? How are you going to educate your end customers? What does the product roadmap look like? How do we tie it into other business systems? And that started to come along in the last couple of years. We're starting to see a lot more people. The big folks have always had it. Right. Yeah. Now we're seeing the mid markets. So let's say 10,000 machines in less a year. And then the SMBs below it, putting in IoT managers into place. Wow. So that human resource and organization structure is changing out there. And I would say, you know, the other, you know, big thing we saw was OEMs, when we first started, were thinking 1-year contracts with their dealers or end users to renew for the last, you know, kind of like the old like satellite radio contract. The last 2 years, all of our direct OEMs have moved to 3 or 5 year, even 10-year contracts because it's becoming so critical the way they operate their machines moving forward, the way they run their businesses, that it's becoming a really high value technology for them rather than a nice to have feature that someone else will have to renew.
Right. So that's huge for your business then.
It's big because for us, it's a long-term partnership, right? So if you're working with them, you know, what we start with today, it's going to look completely different in 3 to 4 years. It's going to evolve, just like my Netflix. My Netflix, you know, 5 years ago, today it's better, right? My Salesforce 5 years ago, today it's better. It's always evolving and new features are releasing. So you really want that long-term partnership with an OEM because they're helping you drive your roadmap. They're giving you feedback in. And for them, a new software release could come out, you know, every month or every quarter. And so that technology that they're putting on there is going to steadily increase value over time. So those long-term partnerships are key.
You mentioned that it's going to change like 5 years from now, 10 years from now. It's going to keep evolving. Do you see the sort of the general direction that evolution is going?
Sure.
Where do you sort of see it?
Yeah. So the large component suppliers and OEMs that we're working with are very cognizant that this machine data is going to help them provide better services to their customers than they do today. A lot of that is going to be driven by what I would call like recommendation engines or predictive maintenance. So for them, so I'll give you a scenario. I'm an OEM. I have 20 years of service record or 10 years of service records on my machines. Now I have a bunch of data that's being connected on all my machines in the field. I can take the data from, you know, customer John's machine. It comes into my cloud and is an event occurred. I can take that data. I can compare it to the last 10 years of service records on that same type of machine and that same type of application. And I can create a recommendation of how to fix that machine. Or I can start looking at that data and create a recommendation of when service needs to be done in the next 30, 40, 50 hours. That big data machine learning
Yeah.
process is heavily being invested in by our largest OEMs and our suppliers, because that OEM now has a very complex chassis. They have a very complex transmission, a very complex engine. They're getting smart pumps, smart valves. The suppliers are thinking the exact same thing. They're going, we have this huge amount of knowledge about not only how to fix our components, but how they should be operated
Mhm.
the most efficient way. Right. And they're all creating these really large, I would say they're creating plans and strategies to start collecting that data, to start putting in these machine learning models to create recommendation engines, either predictive or preventive, back through the supply chain. So that's where we see a big investment's going to being made.
And autonomy, right?
Autonomy.
Autonomous
Yeah.
vehicles, right?
Huge. And electrification and autonomy is a big deal.
And on the autonomous, where I know it's sort of an obvious question, but I think it's still worth having the discussion. In the autonomous side, though, that would be big for you as well, though, right? Because
For
you're
sure.
providing that data even if there's not an operator in the machine.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So the autonomy side, that's probably one of our fastest growing sectors. I'd say electrification in the municipalities
Mm,
are really fast growing for us. Electrification's been slow in a lot of different industries. I think there's some headwinds out there, but in municipalities or in turf, it's really accelerating because the end customers, they're residents of the city. So if I can get a quiet street sweeper, right, that's electric, that doesn't wake me up at 3 a.m,
right,
the city will invest in that. If I live on a golf course and I have an electric green roller versus a gas powered or diesel green roller, I'd rather have that
right.
rolling my greens. And so those areas we see a lot of investment made. Ports, right? So a lot of vehicles around ports, they want electrification or autonomy. We see a lot of that as well. So those are definitely uh, high aggressive growth industries for us.
We I just wanted to quickly go back to the wakeboarding,
Yeah.
because it is sort of the oddball out in
Yeah. Yeah.
terms of street sweepers, construction
Yeah.
equipment. It's like, okay, that's all sort of all what you'd expect. Where does the wake it's specific? You didn't say boats, you said wakeboarding boats.
Yeah. 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 So for sure. Yeah. So we're in the marine industry. Our first uh, step in there was in wakeboard boats, and it's really interesting because there's two big drivers here, right? You have the end user, and you have the wakeboard boat manufacturer themselves.
Mm,
And so if you think about a wakeboard boat, they're really chasing automotive, right? Inside there, they're very luxurious, really great HMI displays, graphics, technology, all this stuff. Well, just like we talked about updating software, pushing the newest software design,
yeah,
fixing software, my wakeboard boat season's only 3 or 4 months. If I have an issue with any of the software or boat or whatever, I want to be able to get that up and going like right away.
yeah,
Um, there's also pretty big key components on there, like my bilge pump, right? Being able to get a notification if there's a failure on my bilge pump or there's an issue on the boat. Some luxury problems like, oh, I left my running lights on and I'm above my lake house, or I've left my lake house
mm,
and I need to turn those lights off remotely. A health check on my boat. Just I'm going out for Memorial Day weekend and I just want to run a quick health check and make sure there's
right,
nothing that needs immediate fixing. Wake profiling, right? Being able to determine if the wake profile is the best profile I'm supposed to be getting. If I'm using the zero wake technology, right? If my zero wake technology, is it operating correctly? And then we have some of our manufacturers that are looking at wake profile versus health of the prop, because
mm,
typically your prop gets replaced, once a season after Labor Day, take the boat out, replace it. But they're seeing really nice correlation that as that prop deteriorates over time, your weight quality is decreasing. So maybe like in July, you'll change that $600 prop out because you'll get a better quality wake for out
mm.
there. We also have some pretty interesting scenarios where maybe from the consumer side, like where are my friends on the lake? Where do you get gas? What are people using for different wake settings? What's my favorite pros using for wake settings on certain
So
wakes?
just to clarify, these are all OEMs that have put their technology into a wakeboarding boat.
Yeah.
The manufacturer has collected all
Yep.
these different offerings for, in a lot of cases, like luxury offerings
Yep.
even, and poured this into a product,
Yep.
right?
And there's safety offerings, right? There's
Right.
like, if my boat gets stolen, right? Where can we track it? There's safety offerings for, your kids taking the boat out and you don't want them down there, Party Cove. just put a geofence in there and let me know if they went into Party Cove, right? Or maybe there's low
Damn it.
right, yeah. Maybe there's low areas in the river,
Yeah.
so there's low areas in the Columbia River, and you just want to notify your kid, like, or anyone operating the boat, hey, if you go down this area, you could have some prop issues, and so you can, the great thing about that is you can set that remotely too, right? So you can get notified that if there's other people are having prop issues in that area. That's a big, on the Columbia River, where I spent a lot of time on, props are getting destroyed all the time because the river levels are changing, and so these are all, use cases that are becoming valuable for the OEM themselves. Also design feedback loop. So understanding we released a new boat, who are using the new features we're releasing, right? How often are those new features being released?
Right.
Yeah. When dealers are doing demo days, what features are they highlighting? Right. What's getting good feedback?
What's actually getting turned
What's
on
getting
and
turned
off?
on and off, right? What are the consumers liking? What are they not liking?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It's incredible. For you, like d- this, I mean, if you talk to a lot of good business people, they'll talk about their mousetrap. You got to
Yeah.
have something, and then some people don't. Some people are just going head to head.
Yeah.
There's two drinks and one
Yeah.
is better than the other
Yeah.
to one different person. So you just kind of mark it and see who likes it. But you've got an area of the market that is obviously in high demand,
Mhm.
and the market's responding. You've got the client book to prove it. But that business acumen that you've developed, did that where did that sort of come from? Did you think you were going to be an entrepreneur in effect? That we were going to start a company one day, or how did that sort of come about? Or
No.
just the approach, I guess.
Yeah, the approach was we kept on getting this need in the market. We kept on trying to find an off the shelf solution. We kept on trying to, square peg round hole, trying to make something work, and we couldn't find it, and we couldn't provide these
And
solutions.
how long did that process take?
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah, and so then we had to dissect not just the technology, but everything that was causing friction for the OEM. So, for instance, OEMs don't want to deal with SIM card management. They want their partner to handle all of their data plans, right? Seems pretty obvious now. Back in 2017, that was not obvious. Number two, how they activate subscriptions, right? They don't want to pay for this thing like a cell phone bill and you have all these subscriptions you get invoiced. They want to activate it when the customer takes ownership of the machine. So we have a billing platform in the background that says, hey, you might build the machine January 1st, but it might not get sold until July 1st. And we have to not start that subscription until it gets sold off of your dealer's lot. Stuff like that, right?
Wow.
So taking that friction out for our OEMs.
So it's from a financial point, though. That's a certain amount of risk for you that goes along with that.
For sure, right?
Yeah.
Calculated risk we got to take, but we understand that OEM sales cycle pretty well, right? So we understand, we came from the industry and we get
Right.
it.
Yeah.
Like just those things were really key. The other thing too was we knew inherently that these OEMs are going to use multiple controller suppliers on their machine. So to be able to interoperate with all those major suppliers, not only to read the data, but push the software update over the air.
Right.
Really big key for us that we had to go out there and form those technology partnerships. We had to build the IP into Elevate. We had to do all that.
But that's a continuous thing because
Yeah.
if you, like, I would imagine that if you're dealing with let's say, a manufacturer out of Japan versus the US versus,
Yep.
Germany.
Yeah. So like with any startup, when you first start doing it, it's a little bit wild, wild west.
Yeah.
Right. And now we have a very documented process. We have a very documented approval process, right? That goes through this, everywhere from not just, how do you, build it, but then how do you support it and how do customers buy it? So, if you want a manufacturer in Japan that has a telematics gateway device and they want the Elevate software on there, what's that validation process for us to put it on there? What's our ISO 9000, quality check process? What's our security 24,000 audit, right? So we have all these things. And then, oh, by the way, how are customers going to order it? So what's the Elevate part number that gets ordered from that new manufacturer
Right.
that they put our software image on it and our SIM card in and ship it?
Yeah.
So in the beginning, wild, wild west, you're a startup, you're just going to get it done.
Yeah.
Now we have a very detailed process to go through there.
Did you enjoy that Wild West part of it? Some people it knocks them right out. Some people sort of thrive under it.
Yeah, I would say that I don't think I like the process, but the inertia and the momentum from the industries coming together and trying to figure this out together was very exciting.
Kind of kept you going.
Yeah, because it wasn't just us going against like, you know, a bunch of resistance. We had all the major people
Right.
coming together to try to make it happen.
You weren't trying to create something that would be
it was just never
accepted.
done before, right? You didn't
Right.
have like these major OEMs and suppliers working with a third party company to try to figure this out, but they didn't have a process for it. We didn't have a process for it. So you're working together to build it. Now it's pretty well defined as we're scaling. So
Yeah. Is this your first business?
Yeah.
Yeah. It just you have the demeanor of someone who's done it before. Well, maybe not actually. Some people who do it before, they seem a little shell shocked sometimes. Maybe that's actually I might take that back.
inside the distribution company that I worked in before starting Elevate is I ran a business unit, and we're growing that business unit 50% year over year for 4 years.
So you'd had that experience.
So we had to figure out a strategy and put together a plan and execute against it. And so I had that experience in there. So
right. That makes sense. I think that's what I was sort of looking for.
Yeah.
So you'd had that without that, like you're going to go out of business, but you'd had that pressure.
Yeah. That entrepreneur piece. Right. Yeah. And it was new. Right. So we're making this big bet that if we sold electronic controls into OEMs, that we would pull through hydraulic controls behind the electronic controls. So, you know, we'd always say for every $1 of electronics that we sold, we pulled through $4 of hydraulics, and we proved that out. So it really accelerated the growth of that business. But again, that was never done before.
Yeah.
But we ran some math and we figured out this is probably a pretty good target. And so for us, you know, that was and that was probably the big risk with starting Elevate is you had to step out with Elevate, and there's this pretty good career path inside the fluid power industry.
Right.
And we're making stuff done, but this opportunity to be part of a major change in our industry, right? To be part of that chapter is too exciting. Too exciting to see that there's only certain cycles in our career that there's going to be game-changing innovation, and we're going to be part of that chapter. And then we're working with OEMs that are really excited on this next generation of the machine. That, you know, it was actually a pretty easy question.
Right. You didn't feel like it wasn't this big high pressure decision you had to make.
Yeah, the pressure's on the customers being successful and the team members, you know, following your journey, but the pressure's not a personal pressure.
What now? Again, people talk about the story a lot, but now, I mean, now you're, you know, full operations, big partnerships. You've got your processes in place. What's the big challenge now? And I mean, I do mean personally, day to day, you come in and you're, you know, you got to make this thing grow and build, and be better.
Yeah, I'd say the big challenge now is, you know, your organization is changing maybe every 12 months, the org structure, because you're growing, right?
Yeah.
So your departments are growing, your areas of business are growing, your markets are growing. So making sure that we're doing that in the most responsible way possible, making sure we're hiring, we like to say A players or rising stars. Right. So we really believe in having an incredible team that is from the industry for the industry. So the really kind of unique thing about Elevate, our core people are our core people, meaning people have been with the company for like 6+ years. Our engineering, VP of engineering came from the industry.
Right.
He built Hitachi's industrial IoT platform called Lumada, their internal IoT platform. With him, he brought over some key team members that were part of Hitachi. So they're building software for a large construction manufacturer. They're based in Seattle, Washington. They're able to join our team, and they've been with us now for 5-6 years. Our key inside operational people came from the industry. Our VP of sales came from the industry, 20 years in off-highway automation. Our director of OEM sales came from the industry, from leading a director of sales team for one of the large publicly traded controller companies. So our director of channels came from the industry, right? So what we've done is we're really focused on building a company that's for the industry, by the industry.
Right.
Because in Seattle, it's very easy to pull maybe software people,
Yeah.
software salespeople that aren't from the industry, and they don't understand the challenges and opportunities our OEM customers and partners have. And we want people that are very passionate about the industry, because
Right.
these are partners of ours.
When you say Hitachi, a picture of a machine comes to their mind.
For sure.
It means something to them.
It means something to them. Yeah.
And then, just sort of last question on the professional side, have you changed with that? Like, when you look back 7-8 years ago, what's sort of been the most drastic?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say, so probably 6-7 years ago, I was into every detail of the technology stack. I was into every detail of the marketing content, every detail of the sales process, every detail of the customer. And now we have people way more capable than me in all those departments.
Yeah.
Right. So our engineering team is world class. They're awesome.
Yeah.
I can't even comprehend on the stuff that they're doing now. Right. This is what it seems like.
Yeah.
Our marketing team is phenomenal. Right. It's something we started to build out earlier this year, and they're just, great. And our sales team, I mean, they're rock stars.
Yeah.
So, I can support them and I can help them, but I'm really spending probably 70% more of the time of working on the business and 30% in the business. And I'm not part of all these these nuanced stuff that come to me for advice and vision and conversations. And I spend a lot of time in legal. So a lot of time in the contracts, making sure the contracts are right, all those pieces. So that's been a major shift.
Did you have any moments where you realized? I noticed when we brought on, we have two new great producers, Josh and Devin. Devin's here today producing this. I noticed it because Gowdy runs that team of the production, and I noticed now, like, if I have a very specific opinion that something needs to get done, then I'm sort of needed.
For sure.
If there's a visual thing that we're going to do, it needs to be that way. But other than that, I'm just disruptive.
100%. Yeah.
You realize, these people know so much more than I do.
Yeah.
Like, I can't spend too much time here because I'm just going to cause problems.
Yeah. And very cognizant about it too, because just the presence can change that conversation.
Right. And sort of everybody's kind of making it their own, and then you can come and kind of disrupt them.
Exactly. So I'm very much, it's one of the biggest challenges for myself, because I love that.
Right. Because I love that part. It.
Yeah. But you got to pull yourself out. And I and the great thing is about our team members is, egos left at the door. Like, these folks want to win.
Yeah.
And so there's lots of hard conversations internally about stuff, but people don't take it personally. Right.
Right.
Because
there's that attitude. There's that passion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the leadership in the company is phenomenal. These leaders that are in these different departments, because they don't sway in the wind. So, like, it takes them some time to be convinced.
Right.
But when they're convinced, they're all in. And I love that, because then I know that we're going to stay on the direction we're going. But if we have to change direction, there's a really good reason why we change direction someplace.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just, that's the next great idea, let's go that way.
Did you see that interview that Bezos did with Lex Friedman?
Not yet.
I'll send that to you.
Okay.
It's sort of touching on that, and it's a fantastic approach. There's actually a lot of similarities.
Oh, nice.
So it's a little bit of hearing yourself back a little.
This wasn't strategic. This all just kind of came into place, right? With these people that they're passionate about winning, and they're very good humans, and so therefore they can have very hard conversations with each other. But once the decision is made, when they all agree on it, or the person that needs to make the decision agrees on it, they're behind it. Right.
Yeah.
And that's, I want to say, the biggest challenge, I think, as we continue to grow, is making sure we keep that core identity and DNA in there. But I think we have the right people to make sure that happens.
That's a huge thing if you can get that in your team. And it's that from that interview, and then hearing you say it again, is that sometimes you won't 100% agree, but if the decision's made, that decision to then go all in.
Yeah.
Okay, I might be right, you might be wrong, I don't know, but if it's your decision to make, we're going all in on this decision.
And what I found is it's like a flywheel because the other team members all know that that is the intention you're coming into these discussions with.
Yeah.
They respect your pushback on stuff.
Right. Because
Right?
they know you're going to go all in on whatever ends up being decided.
Yeah. If that trust is ever broken, then the system breaks.
Yeah. It's a huge thing that doesn't actually get talked about as much as it could be. I wanted to ask you another on it. This is a little bit of a, not to dig into your finances, but the sort of the financial management of the company.
Yeah.
Another thing that doesn't get talked about is when a company grows, if you have 3 people doing a job and they're sort of answering to you, and now all of a sudden you need a manager.
For sure.
Well, there's a cost associated with that.
Sure.
And then they do really well, so they grow the business. So now you need to hire another manager for this segment because you've had to hire more tech people.
Sure.
Very tricky thing because the businesses become more expensive as they create more revenue. How have you approached that?
Monthly. I mean, honestly, we look at forecasts, we look at backlog, we look at budgets, we look at org needs on a monthly basis. Yeah. We're constantly looking at it because we could go hire 10 more people today, like no doubt. But we're not going to hire 10 more people until we have guardrails put in place. So we have things that say we need our backlog to be X. Yeah. Backlog means devices are on order to go into production. Right. When that backlog grows, we're okay. From the time a device is ordered to the time it goes in production, might as well call it 6 months. Once our backlog grows to a certain point, we're okay with hiring the next headcount. Right.
And then you might be sacrificing a percentage of margin.
Okay with that. Yep.
But you're scaling. So you go, okay, we'll lose that percentage, but we're scaling up 20%. We're losing a percent. Okay. The balance is there. We're still ahead.
We're still ahead. Yeah. And for us, it's about a land grab at this point, right? So we're trying to we know that, like you said, we're investing in, the margins can be lower than where we'd be if we were a publicly traded company, because we know that the long-term opportunity here is having, hundreds of thousands of machines connected. But we want to do it responsibly. So we have these really nice KPIs that are showing us as customers are ordering their hardware for production, we know that revenue is going to be coming in at X. Now we can start investing into more headcount before that revenue hits because it's already on order.
Right.
And that's a big indicator for us.
Wow. It's so exciting. I love when, I get all types of companies coming through here. I get the biggest companies in the world. Yeah. And then people that are starting out with 2-3 people, like a consulting service. It's just crazy. And hearing how each person finds their success. In this, the growth, I guess, just to wrap up, the growth over the next few years is really about basically just being able to plug into more on a global scale.
Yep.
And deliver and work with more and more OEMs as you go, right?
Yeah, we see 3 major growth pillars. We see that growth pillar, more OEMs, connect in. Massive retrofits are happening right now with our OEMs. So now that they're on new production machines, now they're starting to set up strategies with us saying, oh, well, maybe the last 4 years is an addressable machine market for us because the technology is close enough. It's providing value in there. And then the third piece is, these machine learning services that people are coming to us to help them with, right? So additional value into the predictive and preventive maintenance piece. So this enterprise piece, we see that as being a big growth.
So these are people that are actually putting new technology. Sorry if I'm misunderstanding. These are people that are putting new technology into their systems.
So maybe they're working with some large language model, or they're working with some machine learning model, and there's machine data from Elevate that they need to help generate that, or they want us to manage the whole system with us.
Wow.
We're being asked to get involved more and more with our largest customers. And so typically if the largest customers are doing it, the rest of our customers are going to do it as well.
Right.
So that's something that we see as being a big growth area too, because it makes perfect sense, right? I mean, they have all of the knowledge and the information, and they're going to get the most value out of that to provide to their customers.
Such an exciting story. I really hope you enjoyed your experience here, because I do not want this to be the last time we have a conversation.
I did. Yes.
It is fascinating what you're doing. It is I've had conversations, and you're filling in a gap in part of these conversations I've had. So it's quite exciting to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for driving in, actually coming to our studio.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks, Adam. And thank you everybody for watching. Of course, you can connect directly with Adam on his LinkedIn, and we'll have their website website. I'm just going through. They've got a website, a LinkedIn, and they've got a YouTube channel as well. We'll put links to all of that in the description. Of course, if you're seeing this on LinkedIn, there will be tagged and a direct link from there. So make sure to check them out. Absolutely amazing what they're doing. Thank you for watching, everybody. Thank you for all the people that support the show. Please keep sending us guests because the more we dig in, the more people we find they're doing amazing things in the construction world. Thank you, and see you on the next episode of The Construction Show.